Welcome to the Hangout of the American School Counselor Association. I'm Richard Wong, the Executive Director of the American School Counselor Association, and today I'm hanging out with Eric Waldo, the Executive Director of the Reach Higher Initiative. Welcome, Eric.
Hey, Richard. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for being here. Reach Higher is Mrs. Obama's efforts to help all students take charge of their education by completing education through college and beyond high school, whether they enroll in a professional training program, a community college, or a four-year college or university. We know that by 2018, 63% of job openings will require some post-secondary education, but at the current rate, by 2020, the U.S. will fall short by about 5 million workers who don't have post-secondary education. How did the First Lady first become interested in making sure students receive the education they need and that the country needs?
Well, you know, for the First Lady, this is a really personal initiative. She herself is a first-generation college graduate. When she was going through school, neither of her parents had gone to college, and her brother, Craig, her older brother, Craig, got recruited to play basketball at Princeton, and that was the first time the First Lady and their family thought about how are we as a family going to value education? How is Craig going to get through college? What does that mean for me? And the First Lady saw that her brother Craig was able to be successful at Princeton and said, I'm going to do that too. I'm going to reach higher. I'm going to claim that education for myself. But she's been really honest and frank about her own struggles as a first-generation college student. So for her, it's really personal to see the difference that going to college made in her own life, and she wants to make sure that students across the country get that same opportunity to pursue and complete their education. And just like you said, it could be a four-year degree, a two-year degree, a community college, a trade certificate degree, but some education is critical. So, the president was really clear in 2009 that that had to be the goal, that we have to lead the world again. A generation ago, the United States led the world in terms of young people with post-secondary credentials. Now, we've fallen all the way down to 12th among industrialized nations. So other countries are out-educating us today. So if we want to be successful as a country, if we want to help students fully reach their potential and achieve their dreams, higher education has to be part of that equation. Some education past high school has to be part of it. So the First Lady, has experienced this in her own life. She's also going through this as a mom herself with, two daughters who are going through some of those decisions around college. And I think she just wanted to make sure that she passed along the wisdom she got in her own college experience to young people across the country and reach out to them. I think you know that so much of what we do from the Washington, D.C. and from the federal level is reaching out to stakeholders. And I think the First Lady knew she wanted to talk directly to students to encourage them and let them know about the power of education.
Well, you mentioned that she faced some of her own struggles. Can you tell us about that? What kind of struggles did she face and how did she overcome them?
Well, there's a few, and the First Lady's talked really openly about them because I think she wants students to understand that she's not that different from them, that she was just like them, trying to figure out where to go to school, maybe had a counselor, an adult in her life who didn't tell her, didn't encourage her. She unfortunately had the bad counselor experience where when she told her counselor she wanted to go to Princeton, her counselor told her, I don't think you're Princeton material. And the First Lady said, well, you know what? I'm not going to let anyone shut me down. I'm going to do whatever I want. I'm going to pursue and persist. And she was able to make that happen. But then even when she got to Princeton, she still had to struggle to figure out how to translate her own experience into success there. She talks about the fact that even from the very basics, she showed up and she had the wrong size sheets for her bed, that sort of simple cultural capital that some people think of as traditional. She and her family didn't have that because she and her brother were the first in their family to go to college. So she talks about getting to Princeton her freshman year and not knowing what classes to select. By accident, she ended up selecting a very senior level class her freshman year. She didn't feel prepared, didn't know how to get through that. And so it was by getting help and going to the Student Services Center at Princeton for students and finding mentors and counselors that she was then able to figure out how to navigate that experience and be successful. But for too many students, they are navigating this on their own, and we as adults and we as stakeholders need to make it easier for them to find the resources to help them be successful, whether you're a first-generation student or whether you're just a freshman on campus with, maybe all your family went to school, but you're still figuring out, how can I thrive here on my own? And all of us are going through that experience whenever we hit, a post-secondary experience.
Mm-hmm. Well, thankfully, the world is a little different now than it was then. We like to think that school counselors probably wouldn't give that type of advice to their students anymore. And also, at the post-secondary level, I know a lot of universities have improved their counseling programs, their advising programs, to help students not only get into college, but to graduate.
That's exactly right. And I think we know that some of the most successful schools and programs are ones that have really figured out how to use data to tailor their interventions to help students in real time who are struggling. Some of the more interesting things we know are also that period in between high school and college when too many students actually suffer from what we call summer melt. They have indicated they want to go to school, they've been accepted to higher education, and yet when they escape that period where they've got that huge support from a counselor to get into college, which tends to be not as supportive necessarily until you get there to begin your services, we know that high-tech, high-touch interventions like connecting a student to a counselor via text messaging will increase the likelihood that those students are going to show up on day one to college campus. So just giving them a text message from a counselor who says, hey, did you get anything in the mail? Like, do you need help on your housing forms? I'm here if you have questions. That intervention, we know from researchers like Ben Castleman at the University of Virginia and Lindsay Page at the University of Pittsburgh, that research has shown us that those high-touch, high-tech interventions are leading to increases in student persistence by 15, 20%. So that's the type of thing that we're talking about. So we do have better data, we do have more technology, we do have better training, but at the end of the day, we all want to use those things to better connect students and counselors and the resources to help them be successful.
And I know a lot more counselors are getting involved in that in-between period and trying to prevent the melt. Well, with the experience that Mrs. Obama had with her school counselor, we're glad she didn't give up on us. And so can you tell us how did she become involved with school counselors, and how did she realize that school counselors can play a critical role in the Reach Higher initiative?
That's a great question. When we were thinking about the role and the emphasis of Reach Higher, one of the key places that we wanted to focus on became school counseling. And really, our thinking here was if the goal is to get more students to and through post-secondary education, we know that while it's critical that we encourage students and they have the tools, that whether they're financial aid, academic, or exposure, it's also critical that we leverage the adults in the students' lives who are going to make the biggest difference. And one of the most under-leveraged but most critical resources is the school counselor. And in this situation, it just became obvious to us that that was the person and the role who had that roadmap for families, for first-gen families, for all students, for how they're going to get to and through school. And so once we started telling the First Lady a little bit about the situation that school counselors face, she thought this was a key opportunity for us to lift up the work they're doing and also try to bring more resources to bear. You know this very well, but for the viewers out there on the internet, I think it's worth sharing a few pieces of data. And number one is we know that the national student or counselor to student ratio is one counselor for every 471 students. That's the national average. That's about twice the recommended rate that your organization talks about, which is 1 to 250. And we know that actually in too many schools, the ratio is much higher and much worse. In California, as a matter of fact, the ratio is one counselor for every 1,000 students. Now, if we think about our most vulnerable students, the students who grew up in a family, in a school, in a community where college going isn't the norm, it's that much more critical that they get that high quality school counselor who can help them understand the AP classes they need to take, the AVID course, maybe get up in a Gear Up program. How are they going to be able to do a school visit? Do they need help on their FAFSA? So we need to make sure that we're getting those students the resources they need, which means school counselors are the ones who are charged with that in their school and in their community. So helping lift them up as resources, lift them up as experts, and also get them both the pre-service and in-service training that they need is really critical for us. So, one of the small things we were able to do, thanks in part to your leadership, was bring for the first time ever the School Counselor of the Year ceremony to the White I Folks may know that I think it's for over 50 years we've honored this Teacher of the Year at the White House. Well, we thought we want to be able to honor the Counselor of the Year in that same way. So the First Lady, for the first time ever this past January, honored Corey Notestein, the Counselor of the Year at the White House, and it was a terrific ceremony. I want to thank you and your team for your leadership to make that happen.
Well, thank you, and thank you for your efforts and your participation in that. It was quite an event, and we're very proud of it, and we're pleased that we have this collaboration with the First Lady. And we appreciate everything that she's done to draw attention to school counselors and to the work that they do. What are some of the other specific programs and projects that the Reach Higher initiative has embarked on since it was launched?
Well, there's a bunch of things we're doing, and one thing I want to say is that as we talk about school counselors and school counseling, I like to tell people that you can think of Reach Higher as sort of the first lady as school counselor in chief for the country. So as school counselor in chief, she's talking to students and families about a lot of things. Among them, college and career exposure, among them, financial aid and college affordability, making sure students are academically prepared for school, and of course, school counselors. So in those big four buckets, there's a few I want to touch on. Number one is this year, for the first time ever, we decided to launch a competition to figure out where the First Lady would give her commencement remarks this year. As I travel the country and as I meet with students and families, one of the biggest things that happens is people will come up to me and say, Eric, we'd love for the First Lady to speak at my child's school or my student's school, or a student says, gosh, there's be nothing more meaningful than the First Lady coming to our school to speak at commencement. And this year, we wanted to give everyone a chance to be able to participate in that. But we also wanted to move some of our policy goals forward. So for high schools this year, the way we're selecting where the First Lady will speak for her high school commencement is a student video competition about what schools are doing to increase their FAFSA completion rates. So again, for folks out in the internet who may not know, FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid. We know that it's critical that students fill out the FAFSA to find out what financial aid they can get as that first step in order to make college a reality. And obviously for current college students, they need to fill out the FAFSA every year to continue to get that aid. I was actually just in Austin this past week for South by Southwest EDU, and the Chamber of Commerce in Austin commissioned research and found that in Austin, especially among vulnerable and first-gen students, filling out the FAFSA, completing that form, had the highest impact at getting those students more prepared for school and more likely to go and complete. It was a 10% increase. So this year, we've asked schools to make a video with their students, showing what they're doing to make their schools college ready and how they're increasing FAFSA culture at that school. What we did for colleges this year was another thing where the First Lady had an experience and wanted to try to scale that across the country. Last year, we brought the First Lady to Howard University along with Gear Up students from the south side of Chicago to visit Howard, and it's something we call near-peer mentoring. These are students from the south side of Chicago who they stay with college freshmen and sophomores who are from the south side. So again, students from your neighborhood, people who've had a similar experience to you, who are showing you, hey, listen, this is what college is like. And you may think that you're not college material, but I can be successful here, and so can you. And so that's what we call near-peer mentoring. Someone, who's close in age to you in experience and demographics and is showing you, look, your experience and mine are similar, and I'm being successful, and I can show you the way as well. So this year, for the near-peer commencement challenge, we are selecting our commencement for a college based on schools creating videos showing us what they're doing to bring more students onto campus, to create that sort of near-peer mentoring experience for students. So that closed at the end of a week or two ago, and so we're looking at those videos now. Going to be really excited to announce those winners, and also excited to see the creativity of students and administrators across the country who want to bring the First Lady and are proud of what they're doing to bring more kids onto their campus. So pretty exciting stuff. One more thing that I'd share, which actually I think everyone will have the opportunity to work on, is that this coming May will be the 1-year anniversary of sort of the name and the brand of Reach Higher. And last year on May 1st, the First Lady traveled to San Antonio, Texas. And in San Antonio, they do something that they do elsewhere across the country, but they've done it in a great way there. It's a signing day ceremony. So some people may be familiar that you think of a signing day as when someone's signing for the professional football team or they're doing an athletic competition. But San Antonio decided they wanted to create a college-going culture, and so they wanted to celebrate students signing up to go to college. So May 1st across the country is when you find out that you've been accepted to school, and so that's the day that at San Antonio they have students have a rally. They honor those seniors who have signed up to go to college. All of the city wears their college gear, and they really support this college-going culture. So last year we went there to San Antonio. This year we want cities, community schools across the country to host signing day ceremonies where they are. The First Lady is going to be at one again this year, and we're hoping the cities and schools will take us up on this and have another signing day ceremony. Wear your college gear, post on social media. If folks are interested in learning more about that, go to reachhigher.gov and you can download a signing day toolkit, which will teach you how to do that. What are the things you can do, as big as having a rally at your school, or as simple as, posting tweets with you in your college gear, encouraging your school to do the same. So some pretty fun stuff coming up.
Well, that does sound like fun stuff and really amazing projects. I'm sure through the two competitions you'll compile a lot of information that you can use in the future as you shape new projects and continue the initiative.
Absolutely.
Yes. So what are some specific plans that you have beyond the signing day and beyond these two competitions? Are there any other projects that you're embarking on now?
Yeah, so in general, I think we've been trying to move forward on the president's goal about being the most educated country in the world. So everything we're doing is really focused on that goal. And so we're continuing not just with Reach Higher on our efforts, but the entire administration wide. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention the things that we're doing as administration, which is, of course, the president's commitment to a free community college, which he mentioned in the State of the Union. We want to make sure that we think post-secondary education has to be what high school was in a previous generation. Everyone has to believe it's possible and that there's a government role to play to make sure everyone can afford it and go there. And the president's free community college proposal is a big part of that. So we're going to be continuing to help push for that across the country. I think also what's critical to understand is that for so many students across the country and families, how they make the college decision is really important to them. And we want to do our part to make it clear to students and families across the country how to make that decision. What's the best fit for me? There's no one magic school for kids across the country, but we want to make it clear to them what school is the right fit, and how they can pay for that in a way that makes sense. So one of the things the president's committed to, which you'll be hearing more about and hopefully rolled out this year, is the college rating system. So we want to be able to have kids and families across the country look online, be able to search for a college and figure out, okay, what does it cost? How are students doing who go there? And does this have the right fit for me, and can I make sure that it's really giving me the best return on investment, and clear on that? We have some tools available right now, like the college scorecard, like the net price calculator to help families do this, but too many people across the country say, it's just too hard, it's too complicated for me to figure this out, and our job is to listen to that and make it simpler for people. But I think we're going to continue to hear from the President, from the First Lady, from Secretary Duncan, from the VP, from everyone across the administration is we understand that college is still the key to achieving the American dream, and so we have to listen and we have to do everything in our power to make it achievable for everyone. People shouldn't believe that price is going to keep them from going to school. They shouldn't believe that somehow they can't achieve that, or that schools and that decision is too hard to do. So whether it's making the FAFSA simpler, whether it's making Pell Grants larger, whether it's making it easy to pay back your loan with things like income-based repayment, we want to make sure people understand the tools that we're putting out there, using them well, and making sure that they can live up and achieve that dream, because things aren't that different today than they were a generation ago. We know that getting more education is the key to accessing a middle-class life. One of the stats I always like to say when I'm talking about education is that we know that college graduates, post-secondary graduates, earn about $1 million more over their lifetime than people without school. If you look at the most recent economic turndown, if you look at the recovery, people with post-secondary degrees, the unemployment rate is much, much lower, about 6% versus people with only some high school, which is upwards of 12, 18%.
One question I had is that most of the Reach Higher initiatives that deal with college and career readiness involve high school students. What involvement can elementary and middle school counselors and students have in the whole Reach Higher project?
Thank you, and that's a great question, because we know certainly, and research bears this out, that the education process has to begin at birth, at the cradle. So we talk about cradle to career. That's how we think about the spectrum. And it's absolutely right that exposing students to high quality education has to start as early as possible, because we know that the knowledge gap, the word gap starts as early as preschool, where we know that folks from upper income families are showing up to preschool on day one with about, I think it's upwards of 13 million more words than their lower income peers. So it's really critical that we make sure we're exposing students early to high quality education. So whether you're a counselor, whether you're a teacher, whether you're a family, the basic things are understanding how you can get more high quality early learning in the middle grades, exposing yourself to rigorous reading, writing, just getting students excited about school, because we know that we have to get out of the catch-up business, right? If we're only thinking about students in high school who are beginning to think about that college or that post-secondary experience, it's too late. It's got to start as early as possible, and I think the highest performing schools, the highest performing teachers and counselors are the ones who really create an entire spectrum experience for students, whether you're in elementary school, middle school, high school, exposing them to that a post-secondary education is going to be critical, helping them understand how getting that education can connect them to a career that they're going to be excited about and that will be meaningful. And ultimately, we have to make learning more personalized, more real, and really connect it to the rigor of what post-secondary will mean. So I think, you know, the elementary school students, the middle school students, the elementary teachers, the middle school teachers, they're college counselors too. You know, their job is to make sure that all of these students are going to continually be inspired throughout their education experience and get relentlessly to that end goal. Because if we're not getting students all the way through the pipeline, and that includes getting them to a meaningful career, then, you know, we haven't done our jobs. And that's why we have to constantly renew our efforts, constantly think about, you know, what is the changing economy looking like? What is the world changing into? So we're really preparing our kids to be lifelong learners. And that's the best thing we can do for them.
Yes, well, that is the best thing, and that really is what students and education is all about. However, the reality is the political climate is going to change in 2016. What are the First Lady's plans for the Reach Higher initiative after that, and what are your plans to keep this going beyond the next elections?
I don't think I'm breaking any news here. The First Lady's been really open, you know, in public, you know, in private with students, that this is going to be her life's work. And I think you've seen the president in the way that he introduced My Brother's Keeper, the First Lady's Reach Higher initiative, and in their own lives, education has made a tremendous difference and has helped put them where they are today. So, you know, while there are, of course, no formal announcements for what's going to happen after January 2017, I think it's a pretty safe assumption that the First Lady is going to continue working in education in her life to help, you know, push forward these opportunities and make sure that kids across the country understand the value of education. And so hopefully that's something that I'll be able to be involved with in some way for the rest of my life too. You know, I've been here with the administration for over 6 years, and first at the Department of Education, now at the White House, and you know, the President's commitment, the First Lady's commitment to using education to change the face of this country is really something that I truly believe. Here in college, I took a history of American education class, and I think the great part of education is, you know, we've always known education is the answer. Horace Mann was the first commissioner of education for Massachusetts in the 1850s, and he said, education then, beyond all other means, is the great balance wheel of the social machinery. It prevents being poor. And he understood in the 1850s that education was the key to help break the cycle of poverty and help people achieve their dreams. And that's just as true today in 2015. So our job as educators, as leaders, whether in or outside of government, is just to be relentlessly and doggedly focused on making sure kids are getting that access to great education. So I'm pretty sure that no matter what happens next for me, for the First Lady, for the President, that's going to be a fight that they continue.
Well, that's wonderful to hear, and I hope the First Lady and the school counselors can continue to fight that fight together and continue our partnership.
What you're doing and bringing together and marshaling the forces of school counselors to help students really achieve their potential, we couldn't do it without you.
Well, thank you for joining us, Eric. I know I speak for all school counselors when I say we're all very excited about the Reach Higher initiative and all that the First Lady is doing for us. Thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today. And thank you for joining us. If you would like to view this podcast again or view any of our other podcasts, please visit our website, schoolcounselor.org/hangouts. And until next time, please remember, life is a journey. Enjoy the ride.